All right, here we go. About to do reaction for you for the internet and the world. What medieval junk food was like. So this is a video about junk food from way back in medieval times. I'm guessing it's not going to be like all delicious like food like we have. I have a feeling a lot of it's going to be pretty freaking weird. I'm not going to swear so I don't get demonetized. But I feel like a lot of it most people wouldn't eat. We're going to see though. We're going to see if I will too. I'll let you know the ones I will and the ones I wouldn't try. All right, let's hit it.
Stocking up on chips and Twinkies and hitting the drive-thru for a greasy cheeseburger seem like modern institutions. But the world's love affair with junk food is a tale as old as time. A lot of what would become the fast food industry began in medieval Europe, where people satisfied their junk food cravings with some interesting cuisine. But knights weren't exactly galloping their horses through the drive-thru or grabbing candy bars on their way to the castle. Instead, medieval fast food catered to travelers and the poor, and it wasn't always tasty. Today in Weird History, we're taking a look at what junk food was like in the Middle Ages. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. And while you're there, leave a comment and let us know what other historical food topics you'd like to hear about next. Okay, time to get medieval on those Cool Ranch Doritos. London is a city known for its major landmarks and for being a hub of British culture, as well as being the place where Harry Potter was hatched in Big Ben by owls. During the Middle Ages, London was a center of trade and commerce, but poverty throughout Europe was high, so for many Londoners, it wasn't easy, convenient, or even possible to cook at home. Cooking equipment and fuel weren't exactly cheap. On top of that, the poor were packed into tenement housing that often didn't have any furnishings, let alone a hearth. Without a hearth, cooking was essentially an unscalable mountain, unless you wanted to fill your home with smoke and risk burning your already meager dwellings to the ground. So people visited cook shops instead, the old-timey equivalent of picking up some takeout. Cook shops sprouted up around the Thames to serve the community's fast food needs. These 24-hour cook shops supplied hot food to tourists and residents alike. They were open every day, with menus that changed depending on the season. But instead of driving through on a chariot or horse, the cook shops offered more of a stroll-through experience. Customers would walk up to the shops to purchase their favorite hot meal. Others would buy what they wanted, then take it home to eat later, because scarfing down a plate of takeout is not always what you want to do in public. Cook shops weren't limited to London. One city street in Bristol became known as Cook's Row. Bristol's cook shops offered more variety, including poultry and fish, and may have been among the first to subscribe to the adage, "It's the smell that sells." They'd have their hearths outside the shop and would strategically throw food on to cook so that the smell would entice customers over to grab a quick bite. Some shops served sweets. Others were known for their pancakes and bread. But the most popular might have been the shops that sold meat pies. Those delicious meat-based treats were a popular seller, kind of like a medieval hamburger, but without the fries and Coke. Speaking of burgers,
meat pies with Big Macs and dark aged.
Everyone loves a Big Mac. There's just something about clenching most of the basic food groups in your fist and then horking them down like a snake smuggling dinner through airport security. So it makes sense that meat pies, the dark age version of a drive-in hamburger, were so popular. These savory little Hot Pockets were filling and portable, the mark of a blockbuster fast food item. But Mrs. Lovett's signature dish had a dark side: spoiled meat. As it turns out, rancid ingredients could be a real problem in medieval cuisine. According to a 13th century Norwich report, cooks would use diseased pork in their pies and serve them to customers without batting an eye. It wasn't uncommon for shop owners to warm up days-old spoiled pies instead of wasting them. Poverty was extremely desperate, and food safety wasn't exactly on the cooks' minds. So the decision whether to heap expired food onto the garbage cart or reheat it and sell it to customers was often disturbingly easy. Probably like it is today, to be totally honest. When they weren't recycling bad food, shops often undercooked the meat, which earned some cooks a bad reputation. The saying from the time claimed, "God sends the meat, but the devil sends the cooks." The shift manager at Waffle House used to say the same thing. Bread was one of the most common foods during Europe's castle period, but most households didn't have their own grain, so
I gotta admit, I love bread. Bread tastes so good, but it's so bad for you. For the most part, unless you're a young person, elderly, people, grandfathers like me, they're usually for the young ones. My kitty's here to say hi. He's not happy though. He's a little bit cranky, so we're gonna put him down. So, but bread, I mean, it's so delicious. Looking at these pictures right here, it makes me want to go get some bread right now. I can't eat it that well though. Not if I want to look good, this good.
They had to buy it from bakers. And while selling ready-made bread was great, bakers could do much more than that for their customers. For example, if someone brought their own meat to the bakery, they could have the baker wrap it in bread and bake it. The idea caught on, maybe a little too well. London passed a law in 1350 preventing bakers from charging more than a penny if customers brought their own meat from home. Meanwhile, you bring your own meat to Burger King one time, and they ban you for life. It wasn't like it was a cow. I'm not sure what the big deal was. Another modern-day fast food item came about around this time, too. The bread bowl. Modern Europeans pioneered the concept by serving soup and stews in a bowl made out of bread, which they called trenchers. The practice helped bulk up a meal, and was probably cheaper as it cut down on the need for dishes.
I would definitely eat
bread
that.
bowls weren't the only carb-loading option of the Middle Ages. In addition to being a staple of state fairs and aimless mall wandering, soft pretzels were also incredibly popular in medieval Europe. 3 simple ingredients combined to create the twisted treat. Just mix a little bit of water, some flour, and some salt, and you've got yourself a filling snack officially approved by the Catholic Church. That's right. During fasting periods like Lent, when Catholics avoided eating certain animal products, pretzels often took their place as a substitute. Monks would hand them out to kids reciting their prayers, while others would distribute them to the poor. Outside of the church, pretzels became a symbol of luck and prosperity. And what's not to feel lucky about when you're chowing down on a handmade pretzel? Nothing completes a fast food run like a 6-pack of booze, because if you're treating yourself, you might as well go all the way. And while drinking alcohol has been a popular activity, medieval Europeans really liked to drink, possibly because they were living in medieval Europe. Not even Lent had any effect on the common folks' thirst for memory-erasing refreshment. Part of observing Lent meant not eating meat, so folks would fill that gap in their regular diets with other things. Fish became the alternative choice for some, others...
I will add to this, something that I know a little bit about history. I know a lot of these people in the Middle Ages and way before and way after wouldn't be they were just drinking water, and they were relying on that as their source of hydration. The water was mostly contaminated everywhere they could get it from, and they didn't understand about boiling it and killing the germs. And even when they did, it probably still wasn't the cleanest, so a lot of people just didn't drink water. But when they were making beer, the process of making that involves, I guess, some type of boiling at some point. And drinking liquor and beer was healthier, and there wasn't parasites in it, and it was cleaner and more bearable to drink. So I believe beer and alcohol are some of the reasons why we're here today, and why a lot of the people that are from Europe are here today.
Turned to booze. While it provided temporary solace from abstaining, the practice of staying thoroughly soaked through Lent didn't sit well with some prominent religious figures. In 1400, the Benedictine monk Robert Ripon had strong words for anyone drowning their sorrows. He scolded excessive drinking as flying in the face of the abstinence that Lent was meant to symbolize, and opined that people got more drunk during Lent than they did during the entire rest of the year. Of course, he probably didn't have to eat some of the meat substitutes that commoners were forced to turn to, like the mock egg, a dish that was invented as a meat replacement during Lent. If he had, he might have been pounding brews in a tavern right beside them. Making a mock egg is easy even today. Just take a few empty eggshells, fill them with a mixture of almond milk jelly and crunchy almonds, then dye it yellow and choke it down with a mug of ale. Tasty? Now pass the beer, please. Sugar is one of those things we take for granted today, but during the medieval period, sugar was pretty hard to come by, and was usually out of reach of the masses. Only those who could afford the expensive sweet stuff regularly consumed it. So, rather than sugar-filled candy bars, people would flock to the cook shops for treats sweetened with honey. A fritter recipe from the 14th century cookbook Anonimo Veneziano called for apples, saffron, flour, and honey. An earlier, more frugal fritter recipe was just fried dough, stuffed with gingered almonds, and topped with a delicious bee juice.
Okay,
gingerbread.
Eating that. That sounds delicious. That looks like a Dutchy donut almost, even though those ingredients weren't in there. But the first things they mentioned about the honey and the apples and all that, hibachi. Sounds great. Delicious. And because they weren't using refined sugar and just honey's better for you than normal sugar. Man, I feel that'd be like a way more delicious treat. I'd rather have that than a lot of the stuff that is out there today.
Another popular item for satisfying the peasantry's sweet tooth also used honey, incorporating ginger, cloves, and pepper, giving it an inimitable sweet and spicy flavor. But when you're in the mood to throw money at a cholesterol spike, there's nothing quite like the funnel cake, a delicious combo of fried dough and powdered sugar. The mother of all carnival foods got its start in medieval times.
Wow, I did not know that. I thought that was a fairly new thing. I've been eating those. I used to work in the carnival years ago as a kid. Times as a kid before I ever worked there, but man, funnel cakes and elephant ears and all that stuff are so good, so delicious.
Funnel cakes began as fried cakes called crisps. Because of their sugary topping, the cakes were a rare treat. Since ingredients like sugar were so limited, people would often improvise their own recipes, which is how we got dishes like fritter of milk, which is just fried, sweetened cottage cheese, otherwise known as a dessert you give your kids when you want to punish them. Waffles, as we know them, also came about during this time. The original waffles date back to ancient Greece. Known as ovelios, they were flat cakes cooked between two plates, and they weren't sweet, which is a huge oversight that arguably contributed to Greece's downfall. Later, the Catholic Church began making flour waffle wafers, which typically depicted biblical scenes. But it wasn't until the Crusades when a more recognizable version of waffle batter, combining cinnamon, honey, and cream, really took off in Europe. And in the 15th century, the Dutch invented the famous grid patterns that transformed waffles into the optimal syrup and whipped cream delivery systems celebrated by junk food connoisseurs centuries later. Initially, waffles were a common street food, but would eventually become the breakfast and dessert staple we fling into toasters to this day. Thanks to the discovery of the New World, sugar became affordable and accessible to everyone by the 16th century. London even opened a sugar refinery, prompting a trend that continues in modern food processing today, adding sugar to almost everything. Sugar quickly replaced honey in most desserts. People began
So it turns out that since the 1600s is when people have really been messing themselves up. Since sugar, from my understanding, is the number one leading cause. It seems like the 1600s is when we got it wrong. And all those refinery places are not good. We should have stuck to like the honey and other types of sweeteners that are more natural and not processed and refined. Jeez.
Crystallizing their fruit and syrups, and even started using sugar to season their meats. If you cover a plate of fish and vegetables with enough sugar, eventually it tastes just like sugar, which was a welcome respite for poverty-stricken families accustomed to eating rotten meat pies. Sugary concoctions became popular junk foods during the period, including crispy crusts topped with berries, fruit, or ginger, and a sweet, fruit-filled ravioli called Cuscanoles. Cuscanoles is just a good name. You can picture that on a Hostess wrapper next to a mascot, like the Cuscanoles Kid. This love of sweetness transformed the European diet to such a degree that the word dessert can even be traced back to this time. Derived from the French word desservir, meaning to clear the table, the French were using it to mean last course by the mid-16th century. The English later adapted dessert to refer to the final course of fruits and sweets that people ate after their meal. The Cuscanoles Kid would be proud. So what do you think? Would you be willing to try some junk food from the Dark Ages? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from...
I would. There was a few there that sound really great. Even the ones that have refined sugar. I mean, I eat it everywhere here anyways. I mean, back then, how much worse because I tried. Some of the stuff looks really, really, really good. Feel free to comment. I want to know what you guys would try. If there's anything there that you would try, if you've seen anything there specifically you thought that looked super gross, so you definitely wouldn't, tell me about it. Also, leave a comment if you want me to react to a specific video you want me to check out. I'm definitely down to see some new things and other people's perspectives. Let me know. Thanks for watching.